In the opulent glow of the upscale bistro named Éclat Noir, nestled in the vibrant heart of a bustling city, where crystal chandeliers dangled like constellations from vaulted ceilings, and the air carried the mingled scents of truffle-infused sauces and aged Bordeaux wines swirling in oversized glasses held by patrons in tailored evening wear, Jasmine Carter navigated the polished hardwood floors with the grace of someone who had mastered the art of invisibility amid luxury, her black uniform crisp yet unassuming as she balanced trays laden with artisanal appetizers and sparkling flutes of champagne, her mind often drifting to the melodies that haunted her dreams, rather than the orders she jotted down on a small notepad tucked in her apron pocket. For at 24 years old, Jasmine was far more than the efficient waitress she appeared to be. Her passion for classical piano rooted in a childhood spent in a modest apartment on the city's outskirts, where her single mother, a tireless nurse working double shifts to keep the lights on, had scraped together enough for a second-hand upright piano that became Jasmine's sanctuary from the noise of urban life and the sting of financial hardship, teaching herself notes from faded library books and online tutorials during late nights after homework, her fingers dancing across keys that sometimes stuck from wear but never failing to evoke the grandeur of Beethoven or Chopin in her imagination. Though opportunities for formal training eluded her due to scholarship denials that she suspected stemmed from subtle biases in selection committees favoring those with polished resumes and connected families, leaving her to juggle community center recitals with the reality of bills that demanded a steady paycheck. And so she found herself at Éclat Noir, not by choice, but necessity, drawn initially by the grand Steinway piano in the corner of the dining room that sat silent most nights except for occasional hired performers, its ebony surface gleaming under soft spotlights like a promise of what could be if only she had the chance to shine. Her co-workers, a mix of aspiring artists and lifelong service workers, who admired her quiet poise but envied the fire she kept hidden, whispering during breaks about how Jasmine could outplay any lounge musician if given half a shot, yet cautioning her against drawing attention from difficult guests who treated staff like props in their personal dramas. And on this particular evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline casting golden hues through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens, the door swung open with a flourish, admitting Victor Harlan, a flamboyant tycoon in his mid-52nd, whose tech empire in software innovations had amassed him a fortune rivaling small nations, his arrival announced by the sharp click of Italian leather shoes and the subtle hush that fell over nearby tables as patrons recognized him from glossy magazine covers touting his rags to riches, story that conveniently omitted the inherited seed money and questionable mergers, flanked by an entourage of sycophantic associates in bespoke suits laughing at his every quip. Victor exuded an aura of untouchable entitlement that made even the maitre d' straighten his tie nervously, his sharp features framed by silver-streaked hair and eyes that scanned the room like a predator assessing territory, settling into a prime table by the window with demands for the finest vintage and immediate service barked in a tone that brooked no delay, Jasmine approaching with her professional smile masking the instinctive wariness she felt from his appraising stare that lingered a beat too long on her features, his initial orders laced with condescension as he questioned the menu's authenticity with remarks like, "I hope your kitchen staff knows the difference between real foie gras and whatever passes for it in these parts," his entourage chuckling dutifully while Jasmine noted the items without flinching, her experience with such patrons teaching her to deflect with politeness, though inwardly she bristled at the underlying assumptions about her competence, based on nothing more than her role and appearance, the microaggressions subtle yet cutting, like when Victor dismissed her recommendation of a house specialty with a wave, saying, "Darling, I'm sure it's fine for the regulars, but I prefer something with a bit more refinement," his words dripping with an implication that she couldn't possibly understand sophistication. And as the evening progressed, Jasmine hummed softly to herself, while clearing a nearby table, a fragment of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata escaping her lips as a momentary escape from the din, but Victor, overhearing it, paused mid-sentence, his eyes narrowing with opportunistic glee as he called her over loudly enough for adjacent diners to turn heads. "Hey, waitress, you fancy yourself a musician or something that little tune? You were humming sounds like you're trying to class up the joint," his tone mocking as he leaned back, crossing his arms with a smirk that invited his companions to join in the amusement. Jasmine freezing momentarily, her cheeks warming under the spotlight but responding evenly. "I play a bit, sir. Just something to pass the time." Her humility genuine, yet Victor seizing on it like a weakness. "Oh, really? A pianist in our midst? How quaint! Why don't you prove it? There's a perfectly good piano over there. Entertain us. I'm sure your talents match your confidence." The challenge laced with sarcasm, implying she was all talk and no substance. His entourage snickering as he upped the ante with a wager to his friends. $20. She butchers it or chickens out, the room's energy shifting as patrons exchanged curious glances, some uncomfortable with the unfolding spectacle, others intrigued by the drama, a young couple at a corner table whispering about whether to intervene or film, discreetly sensing the racial undertones in Victor's patronizing demeanor that dismissed Jasmine as incapable based on stereotypes rather than merit, the staff hovering nervously aware of Victor's influence that could lead to complaints or lost tips if things soured, Jasmine's heart racing with a mix of indignation and resolve as flashbacks flooded her mind of school auditions where judges overlooked her despite flawless executions favoring students from affluent backgrounds with private tutors. The systemic barriers that had forced her into this uniform instead of a concert hall. Yet in this moment, she felt the weight of those rejections fueling a quiet fire, her co-workers exchanging worried looks, one mouthing, "Don't do it," while another nodded encouragement, knowing her skill could silence the room, the tension thickening like a prelude to a storm, as Victor gestured grandly to the piano. "Go on, then show us what a waitress can do unless you're afraid of a real audience." His words, a deliberate provocation designed to humiliate and entertain at her expense, the bistro's ambient jazz playlist fading into irrelevance, as all eyes turned to Jasmine waiting for her response in the suspended breath of anticipation. As Jasmine stood frozen for a heartbeat in the hushed anticipation of Éclat Noir's dining room, the weight of Victor Harlan's mocking challenge pressing down like an invisible hand on her shoulder, while the grand Steinway loomed in the corner like a silent judge under the soft amber glow of recessed lighting that cast elongated shadows across the linen-draped tables, laden with half-eaten foie gras and crystal stemware, reflecting the flicker of candle flames. Her mind raced through a torrent of conflicting emotions where indignation clashed with the raw vulnerability of exposing her soul through music in front of strangers who viewed her as mere amusement, her fingers twitching instinctively at her sides, as if already seeking the familiar ivory keys that had been her confidant through countless nights of doubt and determination. Victor leaning forward with a predatory gleam in his eyes as he amplified the taunt with a flourish of his hand. "Come on now, don't keep us waiting, or is the stage fright setting in already? I bet my friend's here she'll fumble the first note or perhaps claim a sudden case of carpal tunnel." His entourage erupting in sycophantic laughter that echoed off the exposed brick walls, adorned with abstract art pieces costing more than Jasmine's annual rent, the sound grating like nails on a chalkboard as it drew more eyes from the patrons, a mix of curious socialites, sipping martinis and business types, pausing mid-conversation to indulge in the unfolding spectacle, one young couple at a nearby booth exchanging urgent whispers with the woman. A graphic designer named Aria pulling out her phone discreetly to start recording the scene, muttering to her partner, "Theo, this guy's a bully, we should say something, or at least capture it in case it goes viral. People need to see this kind of entitlement exposed." Theo hesitating with a glance at Victor's table where the tycoon's influence was palpable in the way waitstaff hovered nervously afraid to intervene lest they risk their livelihoods in a city where Harlan's connections could blacklist anyone in hospitality, the ethical quandary thickening the air like humidity before a storm as Aria's camera captured Victor's manipulative tactics in high definition, his voice booming with feigned generosity. "I'll even tip extra if you manage not to." to embarrass yourself too badly, though I doubt it'll be worth the effort given your day job, the words laced with insidious racial undertones, implying that a black waitress like Jasmine couldn't possibly possess the refinement for classical mastery, a stereotype as old as the institutions that had gate-kept arts education from people like her. And as Jasmine took her first tentative step toward the piano, her heart pounding like a metronome set to allegro, she delved into mental preparation, visualizing the opening bars of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, the piece she chose not for its simplicity, but for its emotional depth that mirrored her life's quiet turmoil. The Adagio sostenuto movement, evoking the serene yet haunting loneliness of moonlit nights, spent practicing in dimly lit rooms, while her mother slept exhausted from shifts, the nerves coiling in her stomach like a spring, ready to unleash, but tempered by a defiant resolve, born from years of being underestimated from school counselors, steering her toward vocational tracks instead of arts programs to audition. Judges who praised her technique but questioned her fit in elite ensembles, Victor sensing her hesitation and pouncing with another barb, "What's the matter, cat, got your tongue, or perhaps the keys look a bit too fancy for untrained hands," his companions placing side bets on her performance. One wagering she'll quit halfway, another joking about requesting a refund on the ambiance. If it's subpar, the crowd's reactions splintering into factions, where some diners, like an elderly gentleman with a bow tie, shook his head in discomfort. Recalling his own youth, facing similar public trials in segregated venues where talent was scrutinized through lenses of prejudice, whispering to his wife, "This reminds me of those old talent shows where they'd set folks up to fail just for laughs. It's not right," his wife nodding in agreement, but staying silent for fear of drawing Victor's ire, while a table of young professionals debated aloud whether to applaud preemptively or wait, risking association with the underdog in a room full of power players, the bystander psychology unfolding like a psychological experiment where diffusion of responsibility kept most passive, assuming someone else would step in, though no one did. The maitre d' ringing, his hands behind the bar, torn between protecting his employee and appeasing a high roller whose complaints could sink reviews, Jasmine finally reaching the bench, sliding onto it with a deep breath, her back straight as she adjusted the height, ignoring the snickers from Victor's direction and the subtle buzz of phones now openly recording the moment. Aria feed already garnering likes and comments like, "Stand up for yourself, girl, don't let him win. This is modern-day gladiator stuff," the viral potential simmering as shares trickled to social media influencers who amplified with captions exposing class warfare one piano at a time, and as Jasmine's fingers hovered over the keys, she blocked out the noise, channeling the piece's ethereal opening, the soft arpeggios beginning to flow tentatively at first like a hesitant stream, finding its course the notes, resonating through the bistro's acoustics that carried them to every corner, evoking a hush that fell over the tables as patrons leaned in, captivated by the unexpected purity. Victor's smirks beginning to falter as the music gained momentum, the sonata's melancholic undertones weaving a tapestry of emotion tied to Jasmine's adversities, the racial barriers that had confined her talent to shadows, the class divides that mocked her ambitions. Yet here in this defiant act, the keys became her voice of resistance, the crescendo building like a gathering storm that drowned out the initial mockery, leaving Victor visibly unsettled, his fingers drumming restlessly on the table as his entourage fell silent, their bets forgotten in the face of undeniable artistry, the room transforming from a stage of humiliation to one of revelation as the music swelled into its passionate peaks, the patrons' expressions shifting from amusement to genuine captivation, one woman dabbing at her eyes, moved by the peeps' place in raw vulnerability, another nodding in rhythm, lost in the melody's embrace, the ethical dilemmas resolving in real time as Aria whispered to Theosi, "This is why we record it, she's turning the tables without saying a word." The psychological intensity, peaking with the sonata's climax where Jasmine poured her soul into the keys, the defiance manifesting not in anger, but in sublime execution that left Victor speechless. his manipulative game crumbling under the weight of her talent, the final notes lingering like a challenge unmet as the piece drew to its haunting close. As the final notes of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata faded into the hushed reverence of Éclat Noir's dining room, where the candle flames danced in reflection off polished silverware, and the air hung heavy with the lingering resonance of Jasmine Carter's transformative performance that had stripped away the veneer of entitlement from space, leaving patrons in a collective trance of admiration and self-reflection. The applause erupted like a dam breaking its thunderous waves, crashing over Victor Harlan, who sat rigid in his chair, his once smug expression crumbling into a mask of forced composure as he clapped mechanically, his palms meeting without enthusiasm, while his entourage averted their eyes in awkward silence, no longer able to muster the laughter that had fueled his mockery. The young couple, Aria and Theo, leading the ovation with whoops of encouragement, their phones still recording as the video surged past 50,000 views on social media platforms, where commenters flooded in with messages of empowerment, like "This is what happens when you underestimate black excellence. Go girl," and "Boycott businesses that allow this kind of harassment." The viral momentum turning Jasmine's moment into a beacon for online activists who shared clips with hashtags like number talent over taunts and number hidden gems unveiled, drawing attention from music scouts and civil rights advocates alike. And as Jasmine rose from the piano bench, her knees steady now, with the adrenaline of vindication coursing through her veins, she met Victor's gaze one last time, offering a nod that conveyed not gloating but quiet assertion before turning to acknowledge the crowd with a humble bow. The elderly gentleman with the bow tie approaching her first, his voice trembling with emotion. "Young lady, that was sublime. It reminded me of my late wife's favorite piece. You've backed, honored it. And yourself tonight. Here's my doll card if you ever need a recommendation for those conservatories you dream of." His gesture, sparking a chain reaction as other diners followed suit. One woman, a gallery owner, pressing a business card into Jasmine's hand with an invitation to perform at an upcoming fundraiser for underrepresented artists, while a tech executive whispered about scholarship funds, his company sponsored for creative talents from marginalized communities. The tips pouring in generously that night, swelling her apron pockets with enough to cover audition fees. Shidati, long postponed, Victor finally standing to leave, his hasty exit marked by a mumbled "well played" under his breath as he tossed a wad of bills on the table more out of obligation than generosity. His entourage trailing behind like deflated shadows, their earlier bravado evaporated in the face of public reckoning that would soon hit social feeds with memes mocking his hubris like "rich guy tries to bully waitress, ends up schooled in humility." The bistro's owner emerging from the kitchen with wide eyes, having watched from afar, now implementing on-the-spot policies against customer harassment, including staff training on de-escalation and a zero-tolerance stance for discriminatory behavior inspired by the incident to foster a safer environment for employees like Jasmine, who deserved respect beyond their roles. And in the days that followed, as the video went mega-viral, amassing millions of views across platforms from TikTok to Instagram Reels, Jasmine found herself at the center of a whirlwind of opportunities, a conservatory dean reaching out via direct message with a full-ride scholarship offer based on the raw emotion captured in her performance, while a local news station interviewed her about overcoming racial and class prejudices in the arts, her story resonating with thousands who shared their own tales of hidden talent suppressed by societal barriers, leading to a crowdfunding campaign that raised over $100,000 for music programs in underprivileged neighborhoods, where Jasmine volunteered to mentor young pianists like a 1-2-year-old girl from her old community center who idolized her now, saying, "Miss Jasmine, you showed me I don't have to hide my gifts even if people laugh at first." The empowerment rippling outward, as Jasmine established a nonprofit workshop series, teaching classical music to kids of color, emphasizing how instruments could be tools of resistance against stereotypes that confined them to expected paths. Victor facing his own fallout with public backlash, prompting a reluctant pivot in his philanthropy, where he donated to arts foundations anonymously at first, but eventually issuing a statement on his company's website about learning from misjudgments and committing to diversity initiatives in hiring that included outreach to service workers with untapped skills. His transformation, albeit grudging, serving as a cautionary tale in business circles about the perils of arrogance in an era of instant accountability, the broader societal echoes amplifying through congressional discussions on equity in creative industries, where lawmakers cited Jasmine's viral moment as evidence for funding bills supporting arts education in low-income areas, resulting in grants that equipped community centers with instruments and instructors nationwide. Jasmine's personal growth blooming as she balanced her newfound spotlight with grounded humility, returning to the bistro, not as a waitress, but as a guest performer for special events, where the owner renamed the piano corner in her honor the Jasmine stage, a symbol of turning adversity into legacy that inspired staff to pursue their passions, from a line cook starting a culinary blog to a bartender auditioning for theater roles, her reflections in quiet moments at home, fingers tracing the keys of her modest keyboard, weaving anecdotes of empowered lives like the elderly gentleman's granddaughter who took up violin after hearing her story, or the young couple, Aria and Theo, who launched a podcast on everyday heroes challenging prejudices. The economic uplift evident in how diverse arts programs reduced youth delinquency rates by 25% in pilot communities, fostering innovation that fed back into local economies through festivals and galleries, showcasing talents once overlooked. Congressional pushes crystallizing into the Creative Equity Act, mandating inclusive funding for public arts venues and scholarships, prioritizing underrepresented voices, Jasmine ascending to a national oversight role on an advisory board, where she advocated for policies dismantling barriers in music education, her journey a testament to how one defiant melody could harmonize a chorus of change, and rapping with aspirational hypotheticals for readers. Imagine if you channeled your inner strength against doubters. What symphonies might you compose in your life? Step forward. Embrace your gifts, because in the grand concert of existence, every note matters, no matter the stage or the skeptics watching.